The Chargers made a flurry of moves on the first day of NFL free agency, but the biggest splash was signing running back Najee Harris. But does that move actually make sense?
You are Locked On Chargers, your daily podcast on the Los Angeles Chargers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, and welcome into the Locked On Chargers podcast. I'm your host, Daniel Wade, joined as always by my co-host, David Droegemeier, and we've been covering the Chargers now for 9 seasons together, but this is our 7th year as a host of the Locked On Chargers podcast, bringing you your team every day. Thank you to the everydayers out there for making us your first listen. To make sure that you never miss the show, go subscribe or follow for free on the Locked On Chargers YouTube channel and listen wherever you get your podcast from. David, what do we got today?
Well, Daniel, the legal tampering period began Monday, and of course, the Chargers went out and signed all the players that they did not. They brought in running back Najee Harris, which just seems like a Jim Harbaugh type of player, and they grabbed another Steeler, Donte Jackson, the cornerback. And then they weren't done because they were able to bring back Khalil Mack, a very important, integral part of one of the better defenses in the NFL last year. And of course, we take a look at some of the players that actually left the Chargers, like Puna Ford and wide receiver Joshua Palmer.
The Puna Ford one, I probably had the most emotional reaction to today. I mean, that is a huge loss. And I think maybe, it gets softened a little bit. If you'd seen kind of the big time moves at the positions you felt were huge needs, but that's not the way day one went of the Chargers free agency. And we told you on yesterday's show, they're going to tell you what their priorities are on day one or in the first couple of days. And we at least got a little snippet of that with the signing of Najee Harris, the biggest external free agent that they brought in on day one. And when the negotiations were happening, I hated it. I mean, I saw a 3-year, $36 million contract coming down the pipe for Najee Harris, who has, some good that we'll talk about too. But also, running back wasn't the position you were hoping they would fill first. You were hoping they would spend big on the interior of the offensive line. You were hoping that they would find a legitimate pass catcher for Justin Herbert. Those were at the top of our priorities. Neither of those places are where they went. They end up going with Najee Harris, who I think how bad you actually feel about it felt a little bit better because it's a 1-year deal, right? Per Adam Schefter, It's a 1-year deal worth up to $9.25 million, I should say. So we'll see what that actual cap hit is once the numbers kind of settle and the dust settles a little bit. But 1 year takes a little of the risk away. 1 year, you're not worried about the 1,000 carries that he's gotten 4 years prior with the Steelers as much, right? Because it's not a long-term contract. But I think it was more about the position. I think it was more about the positions you didn't choose to address, missing out on some of the big name free agents, missing out on some of the big name weapons, maybe changes how you feel a little bit about Najee Harris, who 31st out of 46 running backs in yards after contact per attempt. You don't love that. I think the other part of it is it felt like it kind of closed the door on a return for J.K. Dobbins. J.K. Dobbins is still out there. But I don't know. It feels like if he was the priority, that would have been kind of where they went first and trying to secure him. And to me, at least, it looks like they're going in a little bit of a different direction.
Yeah, I mean, definitely takes a little bit of luster off of the move. The fact that they didn't go out and get the type of players and address the type of positions that we all know and see as obvious deficiencies that the Chargers need to fix. And of course, we all want it right now. I mean, we are very impatient people. We want to see those improvements immediately. But when you look at Najee Harris, it just seemed like to me, ever since we knew that he was heading towards free agency, that this was the type of player that Jim Harbaugh would absolutely go to bat for. A player who has been exceptionally durable ever since he has stepped foot in the NFL in 2021. He has not missed a single game. Of course, what does that entail, especially for a player like Najee Harris? A ton of tread that has been used on those tires. I mean, he has been carrying the football 250 plus times every single season, and that is a lot of tread. And it wasn't even just that. What he did in college mirrored what he has done in the NFL. Is just a lot of touches on that body. And I mean, to his credit, he's been able to stay on the field for a guy who kind of his calling card, his bread and butter is that physical between the tackles, run you over type of style. And for him to be able to sit there and say, I've never missed a game and I play a very violent position and in probably the most violent game, I think is definitely something that you have to keep in consideration when you're talking about Najee Harris.
Yeah, I think the first kind of alarming thing for me is just the dude averages 3.9 yards per carry, for his career, and you're paying him as a top 10 running back. I mean, that's going to set off a red flag for me just as far as the efficiency. And you'd say, okay, well, the Steelers' offensive line was bad. Okay. You know what I mean? That's the hardest thing for me is if we're talking about getting value and guys outplaying their contract. I don't think the Chargers right now, early in free agency, have built the foundation of a group that can actually elevate Najee Harris to maybe a level that we haven't seen him at, right? 3.9 yards per carry for your career, that's replacement level type of player. And there's a lot of different contexts and things that go into that. But at the same time, you're thinking I can get more out of him. But with the situation right now, it's just hard to think that because it's like right now you still have the same 3 interior linemen that you had last season. Like who in that group is supposed to elevate them? And I don't know. We'll see if he can outplay it. He does fit the Jim Harbaugh, Greg Roman mold. And I think if you're talking about the good, 299 missed tackles for since 2021, first in the NFL. He's a chance to be a better schematic fit than he ever was with the Steelers, who run, much more zone than the Chargers do. He had the 3rd most zone carries last year out of all running backs. The Chargers now probably, more of a gap scheme, fit more what he does well, which is, 4 or 5 yards in a cloud of dust. 4 straight 1,000-yard seasons. Everyone's brought up. Not known as a home run hitter, but did rank 11th out of running backs in 15-plus yard runs last year. It's just not going to hit the big home run 65-yard touchdown. That's just not what Najee Harris's game is. But I do understand it from the standpoint of this is a guy, what you're getting. Like, availability is the best ability, sure, but you have to have ability too. You still need to be a good player, and that's what I hope that he can do. I hope they can elevate him from kind of the inefficient running back that he was with the Steelers for 4 years. But that being said, he's coming off of his 2 best seasons. There is some reason for hope, but like we said, it's all kind of rolled into you also missed out on these other guys, and you didn't go the way we thought you should go, which is always how it's going to go in free agency. And I'm not super shocked the Chargers didn't sign somebody to a top-of-the-market deal and overspend on some of the crazy deals we saw out there today. But that wasn't the only move they made. And the other move they made was Chargers signing Donte Jackson per Adam Schefter, free agent cornerback Donte Jackson. The Chargers reached a 2-year agreement, $13 million contract. This one kind of came out of left field for me too.
Yeah, definitely a very random type of signing there. Like, we all knew that, Christian Fulton was heading to free agency and that the Chargers were more than likely going to have to try to fill that vacancy, whether that be in free agency or whether that be in the draft. But looking at, Donte Jackson, this is a veteran, 7 years in the league, spent most of his career with Carolina after playing with Pittsburgh last year. And he notched a career high in interceptions in 2024. He had 5 interceptions. And I really like what Daniel Popper put in his article from The Athletic. Really provided some great stats as to why the Chargers might have targeted Donte Jackson. He said, last season under defensive coordinator Jesse Minter, no team in the NFL played more zone coverage than the Chargers. According to True Media, Jackson had 13 interceptions and 36 passes defensed in zone coverage in his career, according to True Media. So that right there just tells you that what Donte Jackson does very well, what he excels at in his NFL career, is playing mostly in zone. And nobody plays more zone than Jesse Minter's defense and the Chargers.
Yeah, and I mean, I think, seeing 5 interceptions and the dude go for that number, you'd be a little bit surprised, but I'll tell you the advanced metrics and at least the Pro Football Focus grading system is kind of all over the place on him, because you think a dude with 5 interceptions wouldn't rank 196th out of 223 qualifying corners as far as his coverage grade in 2024.
Yeah,
right?
Did not like his missed tackle rate either, Daniel. It was very high.
Yeah, but the weird thing is he's also was 6th in passer rating allowed at 66.9 with a minimum 25 targets. I mean, a big part of that is because 5 times you were targeted, you intercepted the football, and that's going to obviously drop that score a little bit. But I think the biggest part for this is just the credit with me that Jesse Minter has bought for himself, where know that this signing comes with Jesse Minter kind of leading the charge for it. It seems like that's how it's been since Joe Ortiz has taken over.
Yeah.
He got him the guys he felt like worked with his defense last year, and we saw what the results were. Jesse Minter signing off on Donte Jackson. I'm signing off on Donte Jackson, especially when you consider the fact that you have two rookie cornerbacks from last year who both played over their head. And now, there's not as much risk to having to find that guy because you have two dudes who might be that guy right now. But the biggest deal of the day was not Najee Harris signing. It was Khalil Mack signing. It's not as sexy because he was already on the team, right? But the fact that the Chargers were able to bring him back when he was testing the market a little bit was a gigantic move because their defense absolutely needs him. So we're going to get into why that's so important, an underrated signing with T.R. Tart coming back, and what to make of the Bradley Bozeman deal and more in today's Locked On Chargers podcast. This show is sponsored by Betterhelp. Taking care of your mental health can feel like a big investment, but it's just as important as taking care of your body. Traditional in-person therapy can cost anywhere from $100 to $250 per session, but with Betterhelp, you can save up to 50% per session. BetterHelp offers a flat fee for weekly online therapy sessions, making professional support more accessible and affordable. With over 30,000 therapists and over 5 million people helped, it's the world's largest online therapy platform. I think the other thing is just the convenience. You're not using any gas money to use BetterHelp, and that's one of the things I appreciated about the most. And also just the flexibility to do things on your time, to not have to find a meeting time that you can get somewhere and get out of the house, especially now that I have a baby that's as important to me as ever. But the main thing here is you don't have to go through crises in your life alone, and you don't have to have had one to benefit from therapy. Sometimes it's just about having someone to talk to. Your well-being is worth it. Visit betterhelp.com/lockedon today to get 10% off your first month. That's betterhelp, HELP.com/lockedon. All right, David, well, it's time to get into the guys that were re-signed by the Chargers, because one of the things we talked about yesterday was kind of the concern that the Chargers hadn't re-signed the guys we hoped they would re-sign. And I think some of, the dream of Khalil Mack came true, and, the loss and the nightmare of losing Puna Ford also came true, which we'll talk about in the next segment. But Khalil Mack was the biggest signing of the day for the Chargers. There was no free agent out there, arguably, that was still available on day one that I think the Chargers needed more than Khalil Mack, more than the guy that they brought back. Pro Football Focus is number 5 ranked overall free agent heading into the offseason. Does everything for this team, has been the best defender on this team since he, was traded for and the Chargers got him a couple of seasons ago. But per Adam Schefter, former NFL Defensive Player of the Year, Khalil Mack reached an agreement today for 1 year, fully guaranteed $18 million deal with the Los Angeles Chargers. And David, that was the best news that we got all day.
Return of the Mac. Gotta love it, man. Yeah, this was a big deal. And I think it's a big deal for what it would have meant if they didn't be able to get him back. Because if the Chargers aren't able to get Khalil Mack, they're looking at an edge room that basically only has Tuli Pelotu and Bud Dupree there. Yeah. And so that is a very, very dire situation to be in. And, when you look at this, you don't see a lot of contracts that are fully guaranteed. But when you're looking at Khalil Mack, where he's at in this stage of his career, honestly, $18 million, I think, is a little bit of a discount, to be quite honest.
I do
you
too.
Look at the type of contracts that were doled out and given out, and you consider, what Khalil Mack brings to the table. He brings that veteran leadership, that physicality, that toughness, that durability. I mean, this is a guy who messed with both of his groins basically and only missed one game. Just superhuman toughness. Obviously, you mentioned it, a 90.4 overall grade, 27 tackles, 6 tackles for loss, 2 forced fumbles, 58 pressures, and 9 sacks, according to PFF, because they do not do half sacks. I'm guessing that includes the playoffs as well. And not only as a pass rusher, but he gets it done as a run defender. 88.0 run defensive grade, which was second amongst all defensive ends in the NFL. So say what you want about what this man is and where he's at this point in his career. He is still a physical presence, a guy that still loves to forklift offensive linemen into the quarterback's lap.
Yeah, and credit to the Chargers, for as much as they didn't make the deals that people wanted to see, this would have been huge had he gotten away. And I mean, even if his numbers took a dip from his historic 2023 season where he had 17 sacks and tied a franchise record, I mean, still last year he led the team in pressures, right? Second on the team was sacks, but also had the highest pass rush win rate still. And he's only a couple seasons removed from when he put up those 17 sacks and had 88 pressures in 2023, where he had actually 146 more snaps. Last year,
what a year.
They took, a little bit off of his
Some
plate.
load management for sure.
Totally. And he showed up in the playoffs when it mattered the most.
Yeah.
They did not lose that game because of him. But the fact that he's only missed one game in 3 years, we see how much this team cares about the durability and, maybe the potential not have, bring J.K. Dobbins back, the potential release of Gus Edwards, which we saw. Maybe that has to do with that, right? They're trying to get guys who can stay on the field. Khalil Mack has always done that. And not only that, has been the Chargers' best defender for the last 3 seasons. But the underrated deal I love the most for the Chargers was finding a way to bring back Tahir Tart kind of under the radar. 1 year, up to $5.5 million per ESPN. I love this deal, especially after losing Puna Ford, and we'll talk about kind of the ripple effect of that. It became even more important to go take care of Tahir Tart, and I think for a dude who barely, I think he still has even scratched the surface of what he actually could be, I thought this was a really big move to find a way to bring him back.
Well, it just seems like ever since the Chargers brought in Tahir Tart and gave him an opportunity in the preseason, as soon as he stepped foot on the field, it's like, okay, this guy right here is a man I'm playing amongst boys here. Like, he doesn't, really deserve or belong to be on this field in a practice game. I think you saw right away how impactful, how he was able to penetrate, how he was able to, really make an impact in the limited snaps that he was able to play. According to, Daniel Popper, he only played 31.8% of the defensive snaps last year. But he was a key part of that defensive line rotation, and I think he probably got a couple more opportunities towards the end of the year, and it just seems like whenever he was on the field, he was making an impact. So I think when you get a guy who is obviously a key member of that defensive line, not, obviously the only part of it, but a guy that you can definitely see potentially turning into more with more opportunity, getting him at up to $5.5 million, I think is a great contract, especially when you consider who else you lost in that room.
Especially considering what you have in that room,
Right.
Right now, which is not much. You have a fullback in Scott Matlock and Tito Abonia, and then Justin Aboigbe, who couldn't get on the field as a rookie. So it's a pretty shallow room, to say the least. It still needs to get added to. There is a good defensive tackle draft coming up. Maybe that's where they'll choose to address it a little bit more. Maybe we'll see another signing. Maybe they're trying to find this year's Puna Ford, right? That's the other part of it too. But let's talk about this last one here. The Chargers bring back Bradley Bozeman on a multi-year contract. Also, side note on Tahir Tart, 11.1 pass rush win percentage last year, 21st in the NFL, tied with Nnamdi Madubuike, who has had double-digit sacks in multiple seasons.
And has a $100 million contract, by the way.
But only 203 pass rushing snaps. The most confusing thing was just why he couldn't get on the field more, and I don't think he'll have that problem this year. But let's talk about Bradley Bozeman. And Bradley Bozeman's always tough, man. Friend of the show, the best team glue guy, culture builder, locker room guy that you could ask for, right? The problem is it just wasn't a good enough on the field product right now. And my one thing I'll say at the beginning of this is, obviously you can't run it back with him as the unchallenged starter in 2025. It's a multi-year contract, was what's been reported and what the Chargers announced themselves. But it's tough to gauge fully how to feel about this because the terms aren't out yet. Daniel Popper projected it to be like 2 years, $5 million, something like that. He could be a great backup player, right? Like I do think if you could have a guy like this that brings all of those other parts, just how the team feels about him, how much he cares about being here, you do that. And he's a great fit in that role. We've heard the Chargers mention Zion Johnson as a potential center in 2025. So that they're not thinking about Bradley Bozeman as the potential unchallenged center, but still feels like you need more than that. Like more than just those two dudes battling it out for a position that really hurt you last year. And tied for 4th in most sacks allowed, 28th out of 32 in pass block grade for anyone with 500 blocking snaps, 27th in pass block efficiency, 4th most pressures allowed at the position. I like Bradley Bozeman a lot. It's hard to parse how much is on him and how much was the poor guard play that was next to him. And when you have those assignments that are getting missed, you don't know who was supposed to do what, right? You don't always know that. It's not always clear. But I think the other part that's kind of frustrating, it's hard to really know or like how to feel about it is like whatever the protection plan was between him and Justin Herbert last year and whoever was setting that up and what they were supposed to be responsible for, it didn't work because they had way too many free rushers. They had way too many times where it felt like they were getting blindsided and didn't know what was coming when it happened. Passing off stunts and things like that was a struggle too. So hard to know how to feel about this one, David. Truly it is.
It is, but also I think it kind of goes in line with a little bit of the theme of, durability with players. It's a guy who played over 1,000 snaps, played more snaps than anybody else on the offense. And so I think if you're bringing Bradley Bozeman back on a multi-year contract and your intention is for him to be the starter, I think that just accentuates and really dials up the pressure on making sure that you surround him with upgraded players on both sides, not just one side, both sides. You have to overhaul that offensive line, the interior of that offensive line. You have to get talent and ability that matches what you have on the outsides on the inside.
And the part that's the most concerning right now, and something that is going to play itself out in free agency and even to some extent in the draft, depending on how high they want to take an interior offensive lineman, but with the losing Puna Ford, with the not getting a big-time weapon, how many things are you going to use a first-round pick on or a second-round pick on? The reason this is frustrating is because you told us how much you failed Justin Herbert. Right now, Trey Pipkins is still on the roster, Zion Johnson's still on the roster, and they just brought back Bradley Bozeman. That's crazy to me. Like, it can't stay that way, and I don't think it will, and it's hard not to overreact in the moment. But how can I take that seriously when you see how much that group struggled as a unit? You can't just bank that all those guys are going to make massive improvements. You just can't. It has to be better, and it can't just be one Band-Aid to try to fix it between the three dudes. You have to have competition and upgrades at least 2 out of 3 of those positions. 2 out of 3 positions upgraded, period, end of story, and the other one has to have major competition. If not, it's a total failure. It's hard not to overreact right now, but seeing what that line is and the fact that that whole room is still intact and there's at least a 0.01% chance they try to run it back, that makes me sick a little bit. And I'm going to wait because I don't think that's actually going to happen, but it's hard not to feel like that after day one when you see that group still together. But there's still more to get into because we have to talk about the Chargers losing Puna Ford, losing Josh Palmer, and we're going to take a deep breath together because obviously you can see I need it, and more on today's Locked On Chargers podcast. This is a message from sponsor Intuit TurboTax. Taxes was waiting and wondering and worrying if you're going to get any money back, and then waiting, wondering, and worrying some more. Now Taxes is matching with a TurboTax expert who can do your taxes as soon as today. An expert that gives your taxes their undivided attention as they work on your return while you get real-time updates on their progress so you can focus on your day. An expert who will find you every deduction possible and file every form, every investment, everything with 100% accuracy. All so you can get the most money back guaranteed. No waiting, no wondering, no worries. Now this is Taxes. Get an expert now on TurboTax.com. Only available with TurboTax Live full service. Real-time updates only in iOS mobile app. See guaranteed details at TurboTax.com/guarantees. David, now it's time to talk about the guys who moved on to potentially greener pastures. We'll talk about that, but thank you as always for making us your first listen, especially when the Chargers don't do the things that you want. It always means more that you guys come back to get our reaction and to maybe help yourself feel a little bit better about it, or have someone here to vent with you when you're as frustrated as we all are at times with this team. But thank you again for making us your first listen. If you need a second listen, you want to ramp up for the draft, make sure to check out Locked On NFL Draft and make them your second listen with Damian Parson and Keith Sanchez as they give you breakdowns all the way up every day of the week leading up to the 2025 NFL Draft on YouTube and wherever you get your podcast from. Losing Puna hurts, man. There's no way around it, because I think the hard thing is had he made $18 million per season, right? Had he broke the bank and Milton Williams just made $26 million per season on a 4-year contract. He didn't get that, and that's the hard thing, because he got a 3-year deal, according to reports. 3 years, $30 million to the Rams, according to Jordan Schultz. I would have done that deal, man. I would have done that deal. Puna Ford was so underrated last year. He was so good, and although I don't think by himself he could have kept holding it down in that room, he was a great piece, I think, to add around and to kind of make the focal point. And I think that the hardest thing, David, is we saw so many interior defensive linemen be the one-year guy that was supposed to be the answer, whether it was Sebastian Joseph Day or a Limball Joseph, right? A Brandon
Old
Mebane,
guys.
Brandon Mebane, Limball Joseph, Sebastian Joseph Day. You can keep going on and on. They hit on one. They found the guy, and then they let him walk. And I think that's what made it so tough. Losing Puna Ford is a huge loss to Jesse Minter's defense.
It really was, because, I mean, with Puna Ford and Tier Tart, like, those are the two guys that Like when we were stressing about what that defensive line was going to look like before the season started last year, and Jim Harbaugh was like, "Nah, we're good. Don't worry about it. Like we got the guys in the room, and like
we thought he was crazy,
and yeah, we thought he was absolutely insane, lying through his teeth.
No way he believes that.
He actually was not lying, and it turns out." A guy who's won a national championship is smarter about football than two guys that talk about a football team and love what we do. Go figure, right? But no, Puna Ford, this one was a really tough one because, he tied a career high in sacks. He had 8 tackles for loss, 9 QB hits. He was PFF's 3rd graded interior defensive lineman against the run, which he was such a huge part of that, ability for the Chargers defense to slow down and stop the run and keep it in check and not let, teams just absolutely take over the game running the ball like we have seen them do against Brandon Staley defenses in the past. He was one of the guys that you wanted to root for, that he didn't get an opportunity in Buffalo to really shine, to really show what he can do. He got that opportunity with the Chargers. He made the most of it. He got the new contract. It was supposed to be with the Chargers. But no, it was not. He signs with the other LA team. Just another stab to the heart.
Yeah.
But hey, good for Puna Ford. He absolutely deserves it. He earned it. I was just hoping that it was going to be with the Chargers.
And man, like I talked a little bit about with Tier Tart, like what's the future of that room? Like you bring Puna Ford back on a 3-year deal. At least you have the next 3 years figured out, because right now you got Tier Tart on a 1-year deal, Tito Obonia, and Scott Matlock. Like the foundation isn't built. We know it'll be addressed in the draft. It has to be. I'd be surprised if they didn't try to find this year's Tier Tart, or like I said, this year's Puna Ford, and bring in kind of a prove it deal type of guy in there. Still some really talented defensive tackles out there, and it's also supposed to be a very good interior defensive line draft coming up. So maybe that played a factor in it, but I would have done that deal, and it hurts to lose him. Now, this next deal I wouldn't have done, but I was really surprised that this is what this man made, because Josh Palmer, good for you, brother. 3 years, $36 million deal per Ian Rappaport with the Buffalo Bills. Goes to a great situation to a team that was just in the AFC Championship game, with the Chargers totally missing on the top wide receivers in free agency. I'm telling you, man, the Josh Palmer coming back thing, as much as I don't think this is like a huge loss and he wasn't at the top of my list to bring back, he started looking better and better as the Devontaes and the DKs and the Chris Godwins and the Darius Slaytons fall off the board. It's like, well, maybe running it back with Josh Palmer wouldn't be that bad of a deal. And we saw how much, the Chargers missed him in that playoff game. But crazy also for a dude who's never had an 800-yard season, too, and has only sniffed it one single time. And I think the thing with Josh Palmer is a dude who showed us he could play at a really high level for short spurts, but never found that consistency. And when he kind of started to, it felt like he got hurt and kind of set himself back again.
Yeah, and again, with the theme, the Chargers want players that are going to be able to have that durability to stay on the field and be productive. And unfortunately for Josh, it just seems like he never really got that chemistry with Justin Herbert down. And they really tried to work through it. There was opportunities there, and there was opportunities for him to show that he could be that guy. He could be that number one wide receiver. He could be the guy that was trusted to go make the plays and be that guy. But unfortunately, he never turned out to be that. And hey, kudos to his agent. Another Kenneth Murray situation where, they, to me, at least grossly overpaid a player for what he has done and I guess what they expect him to do. I think Josh Palmer is a solid player. I feel like he has a solid game. He does a little bit of everything pretty decently, nothing overwhelmingly great. Yeah. But for him to get $12 million per season for 3 years is insane to me. I mean, congratulations to Josh Palmer. I mean, he got the bag. I mean, he is a young wide receiver, so hey, maybe he could turn into something. And hey, why not go play with the NFL MVP at quarterback and see what that turns in for you?
Yeah, totally, man. Like he needed to kind of greener pastures. And I think the thing is I don't, I don't judge the Chargers or criticize them for not wanting to run it back with Josh Palmer, Ladd, and Quentin Johnston being your top 3 receivers. The problem is you didn't find the replacement yet. You didn't find the upgrade over Josh Palmer yet. And I think that's really the concerning part. But also, I think the big part of day one, too, is the Chargers also refused to make any irrational deals. There was some big-time money flowing on day one. And you go through the Athletics' top free agents available, there's a couple of deals that don't really match the other ones. And it's the ones the Chargers did because they weren't 4-year deals for $20 million per season. So as much as it's hard to watch other good players sign, you had, Aaron Banks went for 4 years, $77 million. And he was deep in segment 3 of our offensive guard, show that we did, right? Like he wasn't even near the top of the list there. Milton, like I said, $26 million, 4 seasons. Dan Moore, $20+ million over 4 seasons. These are crazy, crazy numbers, man. Like Charvarius Ward, even like off a bad season, 3 years, $60 million. So I think the important part of this is still got to take a breath. It's far from over. The Chargers still have a lot of work that can be done. There are still some really good players out there, and there's some definite improvements still out there. And where Joe Ortiz showed he was best was finding those deals and finding guys that can outplay the contracts they're signing. And he'll still be able to find that sweet spot here. But with just so much money, you have to think some substantial moves are still down the road.
Yeah, and trust me, guys, I know. I know it's frustrating to see all of the players that you wanted the Chargers to sign and fix the problems emphatically, which, I mean, hey, I said it at the end of the season. Go get the best guards and go pay them as much money as they want to and fix it right then and there. They did not do that, at least up to this point. But let's remember, this was day 1 of free agency, the legal tampering period. The NFL league year doesn't even begin till Wednesday, so none of those contracts that players agreed to terms on are official until then. So let's just keep that in mind. This is the very beginning of the offseason. There's still a lot of players out there that could improve the Chargers situation, maybe some trades. There's still some options out there to improve this football team a lot more than where they are right now. Hopefully that's sooner rather than later for the sanity of our fan base.
And for me and David, we also have to listen to our own advice too, because I mean, we were both stressing out today as well, watching these deals kind of fly around, watching the ones the Chargers missed out on and, making some moves we didn't expect from them. So we're in the same boat as you. We wanted to come on here today and talk about the Chargers making some big time signings and replacing 2 out of the 3 of their interior offensive linemen. And to have the exciting things happen. I would have loved a DK Metcalf trade. I would have loved a Devontae Adams signing. It's frustrating. But as we learned last year, you still have to let it play out. And you have to see what the full picture looks like as it plays out, and when you can find it to kind of see it. But I do think that there's going to be moments, right? Like the pressure is on. This is year 2. You won 11 games last year. The pressure's on. We're going to look back at this in a really good way or a really bad way, period, right? So we do have to let the process play out. You want to trust a guy who, trust the guys who got you that 11-win season last year, but you can still question it. You can still have your own thoughts about it, right? That's the beauty of it. But I am still willing to sit here and say, hey, let's let it play out a little bit more, and let's see what they do over the next few days and the next couple of weeks. But the good news is, this is your only daily Chargers podcast. So we'll be back with you guys tomorrow with even more news. So to make sure you don't miss it, go subscribe or follow for free on the Locked On Chargers YouTube channel and listen wherever you get your podcast from, as well as finding the show every day on all of our social media, on Twitter at Locked On LAC, on Instagram at Locked On Chargers, and our Locked On Chargers Facebook page, as well as on me and David's personal Twitter accounts, for me at Dan Talk Sports and David at DroTalkSD. But make sure you guys are with us later on in the week. We'll let you guys get your reactions out to do some buy or sell later in the week, since we had so much news today, and let you guys voice your opinions on it too, because that's always what's made the show great. But that's going to wrap things up for today's show. Make sure you guys are back here tomorrow with the latest news, and make sure those notifications are on, because I think we're going still for a whirlwind of a week. But until then, guys, take it easy and go Bolts.